Thanks, Kenny. And I appreciate everybody taking time today to jump on here. I know it's been a couple weeks since we've chatted, and but I do appreciate Kenny setting up a variety of press conferences with head coaches and student athletes over the last couple weeks, and we'll continue to do that going forward to keep you guys engaged and certainly keep our fans engaged. Unfortunately, since we talked, it seems like this unprecedented pandemic has grown significantly. Nationally, certainly here in Kentucky and in the state of or in the city of Louisville, and it continues to grow. So it's impacted us, staff and student athletes alike, and most recently one of your peers and our good friend Jody Demling, and we hope his outcome will be as good as the others so far. So our best out to Jody. It's just a constant reminder to stay safe, stay positive, and stay home unless you really need to get out. So, and we're adhering to those warnings that are being shared in as you can see, our head coaches and key people, including student athletes, which is allowed by the NCAA to share some PSAs out there when needed. So we'll continue to battle it and make decisions accordingly. And they are definitely fluid, both the situation and our decisions. But on a personal front, I've spent the last 12 days at my lake house trying to just stay in a safe environment, but really to reflect on where we are and plan, handle all the meetings and video conference from there. I've been pressed into servant leadership. Justine Sowery and Chris Mack both live in the same neighborhood, and I've had to deliver toilet paper to Justine and cut Chris's grass while he was out of town. So I'm doing my part. But seriously, I think on these video conference calls, they were really bulked up a couple weeks ago. We were doing at the university leadership 5 days, 2 hours apiece. ACC had three days, an hour and a half. Our senior staff was 3 days, an hour and a half. And then I got another 6 or 7 committees that were eating up a lot of time. And it's reduced by the week, which is allowing us to really focus on the business. And that's what we've done over the last probably 10 days, 2 weeks, is really just get back to focus on the business. Our primary focus is and guiding principle is the student athlete safety, health, and welfare. And we're dealing with 600 plus athletes and all the things that are going on in their lives, and it takes a lot of management. But they're the reason we have these cool jobs here and get to do what we do. And I think our team's done a great job in providing leadership, our head coaches, sport administrators, et cetera, and making sure they're taken care of, getting home, getting fed. For those that are on campus that are, for different reasons, hardship or international athletes, we're taking care of them as well. So on the sports side, I think everybody has seen what's happened where we've wrapped up winter and spring sport activities. And, there's a lot of guidance that's been provided on what activities are permissible. And that's kind of behind us now. Now we're looking to figure out where we go with some institutional level decisions. The NCAA did pass some decisions on extending the 5-year clock of student athletes related to cancellation of the spring sport, potential additional financial aid and extending of scholarship limits to spring sports, expansion of the baseball roster. There was a variety of things for us to consider. And we met with our sport admins, our head coaches, to try to size up what do we think the reality is if certain athletes came back and what we'd have invested between financial aid and other expenses. And we think it's roughly $550,000, and it's certainly going to be plus or minus on that. But that's where we tried to scope it up, much like other schools. So for now, we're just focused on what's going to be happening with summer school, making sure those that are taking on online courses are getting there. The ACC, like all conferences, are reviewing contingency plans for the summer, what activities are going to be allowed, and then a big focus on the fall sports. Certainly, Olympic sports will have a focus, but the football is going to be the primary one, as most know, because of the financial implications on the athletic department. So, it'd be in everyone's best interest if we could start on time and have our season as planned, but we're all developing contingency plans on the schedule and the financial impact that may have, even if we started on time or we're delayed. But I don't foresee games in the stadiums without fans. I just don't. I think that the more we've learned since that decision or consideration of having basketball tournament games in an arena without fans to where we are today, I really think that health officials will make those decisions, not not the leaders at the in the athletic world. But if we do have to postpone, selfishly, I hope we can move it in kind of a schedule block where we move forward September 1st to 15th or October 1st to November 1st. But noting that a season effectively takes 4 months, even if we were to start beginning in November, I'd hope we'd be wrapped up by the end of February before we get into postseason basketball. But that's really looking ahead and more than there's any insight or anything we've discussed at a conference level. So I think there'll be a lot to sort out because you certainly wouldn't want to have a home football and a home basketball game on the same date if that was to move out. But time and hopefully a cure for this pandemic will dictate what the right answer is. But for now, we'll stick to our routines and video conference and making decisions to be better when we get out of this thing. And our coaches are doing a terrific job organizing everyone and communicating on a daily basis. Recruiting is in a dead period as far as unofficial visits through May 31st, but the coaches are still recruiting and reaching out. And I think those that are really, great communicators, great leaders, and organizers are going to win in this process. I think you get the buy-in from the student athletes that we currently have on camp or in our stable. Create accountability and keep them and support their mental and physical conditioning is what we're trying to do from afar. So I think the only thing open here is training rooms. The athletes can rehab injuries, but other than that, we've been shut down for a couple of weeks and we'll continue to stay that way. Looking at our financial picture, we're still on track for a positive result in fiscal year 20 that ends June 30th. We took some, you can call them aggressive or conservative steps, right when we got the coronavirus and COVID-19 was announced and basketball tournaments were canceled. We were quickly thinking about it that week and what it meant. And those decisions, as I say jokingly, I don't know whether you want to call them aggressive or conservative, have been beneficial to us and have allowed us to offset, the lower or reduced distribution from the NCAA/ACC, primarily travel, certainly meals, halting equipment and supply purchases and tabling any projects we have availed us an opportunity to kind of offset that. And we've spent an enormous amount of time in the last week to 2 weeks on our fiscal year 21 revised budget, which there's a lot of assumptions that we're playing with related to football and potentially the hangover effect into basketball. But once we have a better feel for the economic impact on our fans and donors, as well as the social impact of those who simply don't feel safe in a public environment, we'll better be able to dial in. But we're using our best guesstimates at this point to think about what that means. And while fans are worried about how we're going to tailgate or how do we sit next to each other in the stadium, I would think that health officials would have us in a good place by then. I'm more concerned about entry gates and being elbow to elbow there and things like that, and what we can do in the meantime to improve our football stadium before we have our opening kick. On the expense side of the equation, we've been working on a number of initiatives and developing a variety of ways to impact our bottom line. You've certainly read about other schools that are taking some measures, some aren't. They have reserves that we don't have the luxury of. And I would say that today our head coaches have been terrific in this conversation. Senior staff coming forward, not having to make demands and requirements and arm twisting and all that, but we are going to have the senior staff and head coaches forego 10% of their compensation during the next fiscal year, starting July 1 through June 30th. And we do have 4 coaches at the top that are $1 million plus earners, and they've been great. I mean, each one of them in their conversations, calling, reaching out, what can we do? How do we help? And this is the guidance that I was providing going back, I guess, 10 days ago or so, or 2 weeks, whatever it was that we were thinking about this. We'll do that. I'm going to forgo my bonus this year of $150,000, and again next year of another $150,000. So that's another $300,000 to help us, and that'll be on top of my 10% reduction of my base of $850 to go to $765. So I started in this gig at a base of $1.2 million, and every time we seem to have a crisis, I go downward. So I think after a couple more of these, Lori and I will be writing a check so I can come to work. But we're committed to trying to do everything we can help. the cause here. So maybe when Michael Dudas calls me later when I'm retired, I won't be able to give him the donations I intend because I'm doing it now. But we're happy to help out. I really, it's a good thing. It's a good deed, and we're very fortunate as a family to be in position to make this change and help the cause. So I just don't want to put the university in any more of a flux than it needs to be at this point. We do have a hiring freeze, much like the university does. It's been in place for a couple of weeks. I guess maybe the week after the tournaments were canceled. So we've sat on all that, and we're challenging our staff to come up with more initiatives to help out, be a part of the solution. As one of our core beliefs is, we win together. And as you can see, we recently emphasized our tagline, "We rise as one," with our donors and fans. And we have a belief there's a lot more positive days ahead. So with that, I'll open it up to some questions.
Vince, Danielle Lerner from The Athletic here. Do you guys have a target figure that you're looking for as far as savings from, everything you just mentioned, the salary cuts and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, we're still developing that because the revenue is moving. But if I gave you a plus or minus, I'd say 15 million.
Vince, Tim Sullivan from the Courier. The coaches are under contract, so these are voluntary pay reductions. Is that correct?
That's correct, Tim. Since and as am I, and frankly, probably not realized, but all of our employees are under, and athletics have a 1-year contract, and then some of the coaches and myself have multi-year. It's accomplished. Having been through this before, and maybe this is where business experience in the past helps in this role. It seems to keep coming back. But it's a simple acceptance letter. There would be a one-pager. There would be an amendment to their current agreement where it would just state the terms of what they're accepting related to their agreement and the start-stop date. So there's definitive and they're clear on what they're agreeing to.
Can you tell us how many of the coaches have accepted that?
100%. 100%. All coaches.
Of the top 4 that you mentioned, can you give us the total, the 10%, what it would mean for each of the 4?
Yeah, it's approximately $10 million, between the top 4. They make up, call it about 10 of the 12 or 10. I think it's around 11, 8 or 9. So, Chris is at $4 million. I think Scott's at 3.25. Jeff around $1.5 million, and Dan around $1.2 million in that range. So it kind of gets you right up on that $10 million figure between the top 4.
Thank you.
When you describe senior staff, who's included in that?
It's our associate AD, senior associate AD. So it's 12 of them plus me. So we have, including my comp, it's another $2.5 million, 2.55 range for the 13 more people.
So your total savings then between the coaches and the staff would be about what?
Around if you think about, call it $2.5 million for staff and call it $12 million for coaches, you're at 14.5. You take the 10%, that's 1.45, and then add on another 300,000, and I'm taking on top of that, and you'll be at 175 amongst our group.
Okay. What about budget cuts beyond that? Are you tightening your belt other than the things that you've announced?
Yeah, it's to use your analogy, it makes my stomach hurt. But these are difficult decisions that you got to make, but they need to be made. I mean, you got to be fearless to make the right decision here. And we are looking at a number of initiatives, but as it gets into sport budgets, you're going to see there's going to be quite a bit. I mean, we may be on buses more than teams like incidental meals, trimming of things we've been able to do. We're looking at all our agreements with any vendor, any commitments we have out there. Everything is under review right now as we get in and start to tally up the initiatives. But sport budgets will definitely be impacted. We're trying to minimize it as best we can because we really want we're trying not to impact the student athlete experience the same as when I got here and we had some financial issues. That was the thing I tried to protect. And if that meant us taking it a little more on the chin, and the support staff and things like that, we'll do so again.
Vince, Minnesota Regents were told that to expect a best case scenario of a $10 million revenue reduction and as much as $75 million if football is affected in the fall. Do you have like A, B, and C scenarios, and how bad could it get?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people are familiar with our football revenue. It's in the high 40 millions that hits our budget. The way we book everything, and that does include the media rights that we get from the ACC. So I think if you looked into our income statement, you would see what that impact football could have if there wasn't a season. But I do think that if you don't have a football season, then you're parlaying a potential impact on men's basketball. You have to believe that there is some overlap there, but there would be that'd be a greater problem. And I think that's why everyone's going to work hard, the NCAA, the ACC, et cetera, to try to maintain most, if all, particularly, hopefully, all of the football schedule, and that we are on the lower end of our range, much like I hope Minnesota is.
How deep into the summer do you think you can go before a decision has to be made on football, Vince? Not you personally, but overall.
Yeah, I think you hear varied opinions on it, Russ, between head coaches and administrators, and they're not even all on the same page. I think our coaches are getting on the same page, because what you're now going to see is football coaches creating subcommittees and conferences is what I expect to happen. They're certainly talking with each other. I talked to Coach Satterfield about it over the weekend. We talked about our own football budget. I share everything with him, and we talk about what's a safe, healthy time frame. Should it be the kids need to be on campus in semester 3, summer school 3, which for us starts July 8th. That's when summer school 3 starts. And if we're in the dorms, we're probably going to be in the locker rooms, and that means we're doing physical activity, getting ready for football practice to start early August and kick off against NC State early September. But it always feels like everybody gives that 60-day window. And then you have, I saw where Matt Campbell at Iowa State said when he was at, I believe, Monmouth, that, they didn't have all this preseason, didn't have all these things. They just reported, hoped the kids stayed in great shape and did what they should be doing, and then start going. But there's a fine science to how you get kids conditioned. And I think, honestly, for the safety of them, you don't want them out there in poor condition. That's when injuries happen, is when kids aren't well conditioned. So I'm hopeful we have a 60-day window before our first whistle blows.
Vince, this is Aaron Matus with WDRB. You mentioned the vendors, TV contracts, some of the stuff that's external to the athletic department. Do you get the sense of we're all in this together mindset, or do you think that a lot of it may end up falling on universities and athletic departments?
No, I think there's a lot of compassion, to put it softly, and there is a lot of compassion. Everyone's aware of what we're into here. There's leniency in a lot of ways on things. We're certainly trying to show that compassion. We've relaxed dates on when season tickets will be paid or when their donations are paid. We're trying to be thoughtful about payment plans. I think that's symbolic of what's happening with those that we work with, our third parties, as much as to how we're handling things inside the university and inside athletics.
Vince, the university has announced a series of salary cuts and some furloughs. Are you having any furloughs?
I think that's something we're trying to sort out, Tim, as we get through this coming week. I would expect that, honestly, we'll fall in line with what the university plan is. I did not want to announce before then what we're discussing today. The university's work, the leadership's done an amazing job. Neely's been great through this whole process to get to where their announcement is today. So I think we're in sync in a lot of ways to consider if we do need to. If activity does not pick up, do we need to look at what we can do? relative to, any furloughs. But, and this is a unique situation where, we don't have, outside the head coaches and senior staff, we don't have a significant amount of highly paid staff. So I would say that, the government, program that's out there is, it's certainly beneficial, and we're thankful if that were to happen to university employees that they have that available to them.
Do you guys have any idea how many of your senior spring sports athletes are going to take advantage of that eligibility relief and come back next year?
Yeah, Danielle, we have 36 that would be eligible. If I had to do a Mason-Dixon line, I'd say it's right in the middle, right at 18, and it'll be plus or minus maybe, 15 to 20. I think our sport admins and our head coaches are pretty aware of who already has an opportunity to move on, either professionally, whether it be baseball with Dan, we got to watch and see what happens with the draft. Professionally, meaning go on to a career outside of sports. Most have indicated whether they're going to go on to graduate school or take on a job opportunity, which I hope is still available to them, or come back and compete and continue their education. But I would say we're going to be, I would say about half.
The figure that you cited at the beginning of the call, I think you said roughly $550,000. Is that just seniors, or is that kind of the overall expense, including underclassmen and incoming freshmen as well?
Just the senior, just that it applies to the financial aid waiver. What we did is, and I don't want to speak for some of these individual student athletes, but we've had conversations. We've kind of penciled out a list of names who we think are going to come back, and then looked at what aid they have today. We can't increase their aid. You can either maintain it or reduce it. And we've just looked at what if we carried forward their aid, and frankly, it's probably in that 350 to 375 range of the 550 that I mentioned. The other being indirect costs related to some direct costs, whether it be meals or travel otherwise.
Vince, this is Gary Graves from the JP. In terms of football season, while you would ideally like to have a full season, if you have to cut, would the guarantee games be the first ones to go, or how are you looking at that? As just maybe an all-conference schedule, or what?
Yeah, that gets tricky, and I'm relying on our conference. We're all participating in those conversations, and offline, with my peers in the conference, we're talking about it, and I think you'll see that shape up. But I don't think you can say at this point, we don't have enough information to say, because our non-conference games don't align up on the same weeks perfectly with the way we want. We have a nuance in the ACC called Notre Dame that slides in there with 5 of us. So it's a little bit different in terms of how you come up with the perfect fit. So that's why I say I'd love to see the whole NCAA or, some governing body to step in and say, we're just going to move the whole schedule block versus trying to, pick through this thing. So I'm hopeful that, the pandemic cure will help, or certainly we'll see some improvement in the forecast of what we have here.
Vince, is there any possibility that you may have to eliminate a sport as this persists?
Not as we currently budget where we are. I think that, we've not gone down that path, Tim. I mean, that's the thing that, I think everyone will do all they can to protect. My focus is just on the current budget that we've revised and how we make that work. And I feel like we've got some good assumptions around how the economic impact may have an impact on season ticket holders. And maybe there's some deterioration there this year while they move to single game buyers on a as needed basis. Or there's just, as I mentioned, just the social impact of, some people are more concerned about, is it really, they're paranoid that is this thing really cured? There may be a lag time with a certain amount of fans to enter a public environment like a football stadium. So we've not go down that path. It's not needed today, nor have we really spent any time. I'll be honest, I hadn't even looked at a line item on the other sports to think about that. We're just looking at what we can do in our overall sport budget, and then issued out some numbers to try to get the head coaches to work with us on.
We'll take two more questions for Vince.
Vince, this is Aaron with WDRB again. What's the split, if you know it off the top of your head, TV revenue for football versus gate revenue? And is it that number that's keeping you from wanting to play games without the fans, or is it more of the fans belong in the stands for college football?
No, I'm just more about, it just seems coordinated that if we're healthy and everyone's safe, then we get together. And it just seems counterintuitive to have, the young men out there tackling and touching each other and the same ball and all the things you go through if we're still in mask and staying at home. It just seems like the prudent thing to do. And I certainly don't have the vote. I'll adhere to whatever the rules are, and then we'll probably have some leeway on that. But it just doesn't seem to me practical. The revenue from that, the one thing about the ACC network that is beneficial is, your revenues are based upon distribution, not on advertising sales. So we want to get in more households to grow that number as much as we do want to try to sell another ad, and that's selfishly me speaking.
Vince, Michael McCammon from Cardinal Authority. There's still a business aspect of this as well, and we talked to Jeff about this yesterday, but there's discussion out of Mississippi State that they're coming after Jeff for their opening down there. Have you had any communication with that program about that position, and do you anticipate, if you have not?
Well, and this happens almost annually with Jeff, so I always try to, frankly, avoid these conversations because he's always speculated every opening that comes up. Last year it was Tennessee, so I don't want to get into speculating on each year if he's been contacted, if I've been contacted, and all that goes. It's just clear that on some years there will be. He's a terrific coach. He's done a terrific job here over the course of his career. We all know that. I certainly we've tried to do the things to keep him here and want him to be here a long time and retire here, as he says it every year at his tip-off lunch. And he always jokes that I'm going to retire or be fired here, and we hope it's retired. That I don't see anything changing in his success. I don't see anything changing in people trying to get his attention. But our hope is that Jeff maintains his love and loyalty for the university, and that Lauren and the kids are happy here. And it's a great opportunity. We have a great environment. He knows that. I don't have to oversell that. So I don't know what any plans he would have, but we don't have any plans of seeing him go away. We hope he's tipping off with us again.